I'm Rebecca Mishaw, 29, and I thought I had everything figured out. A beautiful home in suburban Boston, a thriving career in marketing, and a husband, Andrew, who I believed loved me more than anything. That was until my stepsister Jasmine entered our lives permanently. I never thought my own husband would choose my stepsister over me, but 7 years of marriage shattered in a single day. Before I tell you how I discovered their betrayal and served the coldest revenge, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories about family betrayal and sweet justice. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old. The split wasn't particularly ugly, but it wasn't amicable either. My mother moved to Chicago while my father and I remained in Boston. For 4 years, it was just Dad and me in our small apartment in Somerville. Those were good years, difficult at times, but we formed a bond I thought would last forever. Everything changed when I turned 12. Dad met Elaine, a divorced woman with a 10-year-old daughter named Jasmine. From the moment they introduced us, something felt off about Jasmine. She had this way of smiling at adults that charmed them instantly, but when they weren't looking, that smile would vanish. Within 6 months, Dad and Elaine were married, and Jasmine became my stepsister. We moved into Elaine's larger house in Brookline, and suddenly I was sharing my father with strangers. But the worst part wasn't sharing Dad, it was Jasmine's behavior. At first, it was small things. My favorite earrings would disappear, only to show up in Jasmine's jewelry box. She'd claim I had given them to her, and when I denied it, she'd cry until my father told me to stop being selfish and learn to share with your sister. This pattern continued. My belongings, my privacy, even my friends became targets for Jasmine's manipulation. By high school, Jasmine had perfected her tactics. She'd wait until we were alone to say things like, "Your dad loves me more now. I'm the daughter he always wanted." Then in front of our parents, she'd be sugary sweet, offering to help me with homework or complimenting my outfits. I tried telling Dad about Jasmine's two-faced behavior, but he dismissed it as typical teenage girl drama and told me to make more of an effort. While Jasmine coasted through school on charm and minimal effort, I buried myself in academics. I worked part-time jobs, joined extracurriculars, and eventually earned a scholarship to Boston University. College was my escape. I finally had space from Jasmine and could build my own life. Senior year of college changed everything. I was studying at a coffee shop near campus when I accidentally knocked over a stranger's laptop with my backpack. That stranger was Andrew Miller, a graduate student in architecture. He was tall with kind brown eyes and a smile that made my heart skip. Instead of being angry about his nearly destroyed computer, he laughed and asked if I'd make it up to him by having coffee together. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked about everything: our families, our dreams, our favorite books. Andrew was thoughtful and attentive in ways I'd never experienced. He remembered small details, like how I preferred my coffee or which authors I loved. We discovered shared interests in hiking and cooking. With Andrew, I felt seen for the first time. Our relationship progressed naturally. Weekend hikes turned into weekend trips. Coffee dates became dinner dates. After graduation, when I landed my first marketing job and Andrew started at a prestigious architecture firm, we decided to move in together. 2 years later, Andrew proposed during a sunrise hike in the White Mountains. Our wedding day was everything I'd dreamed of almost. Jasmine, then 22, was notably absent during the ceremony preparations, showing up just minutes before I walked down the aisle. During the reception, she spilled red wine on my dress, claiming it was an accident. When she gave her unexpected "Sister of the Bride" speech, she shared embarrassing stories from our teenage years that no one else found amusing. Andrew noticed my discomfort and whispered, "Don't worry about her. This is our day." After our honeymoon in Greece, Andrew and I settled into married life. We bought our house in a quiet Boston suburb, a beautiful colonial with a yard big enough for the family we planned to have someday. Andrew's career flourished. He became known for his innovative, sustainable designs. I climbed the corporate ladder at my marketing firm, eventually becoming a senior manager. For 5 years, life was good. We hosted dinner parties, took vacations, and built a comfortable life together. We talked about starting a family soon, once we felt more established in our careers. From the outside, we were the perfect couple with the perfect life. Jasmine's appearances in our lives were sporadic but always disruptive. She'd show up whenever she faced a crisis after breakups, job losses, or financial troubles. Each time, she needed money or a place to stay, just until she got back on her feet. Each time, she overstayed her welcome and left chaos in her wake. What bothered me most was Andrew's growing sympathy for Jasmine. He didn't see what I saw: the calculated manipulation, the fake tears, the convenient emergencies. "She's had a rough life," he'd say. "We should help family when they need it." I didn't argue, but I noticed how Jasmine's visits became longer, her requests for money larger, and Andrew's defenses of her behavior more frequent. I never imagined these patterns would lead to the complete destruction of my marriage. If only I'd recognized the warning signs sooner. The first changes in Andrew were subtle, so subtle I almost convinced myself I was imagining things. About 3 months ago, he started working late more frequently. Architecture firms do have busy seasons and deadline crunches, so initially, I didn't think much of it. But then I noticed he wasn't texting me during these late nights like he usually did. Our 7th wedding anniversary fell during this period. I planned a surprise dinner at home: his favorite steak, roasted potatoes, and chocolate souffle for dessert. I left work early, spent hours cooking, and set the table with our wedding china. 8 o'clock came and went, 9 o'clock, 10, around 11, Andrew finally walked through the door, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. "I'm so sorry, Becca," he said, using the nickname only he called me. "The Phillips project deadline got moved up. The whole team had to stay late." He didn't mention the anniversary until he saw the unlit candles and cold food on the dining table. His face fell. "Oh God, that was today. I'm the worst husband ever." I accepted his apology and reheated the food. We ate in relative silence, and when he suggested we celebrate properly on the weekend, I agreed. But something felt off. The Andrew I knew would never have forgotten our anniversary. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes. Andrew became protective of his phone, taking it with him to the shower, quickly turning it face down when I entered the room, changing his password from our anniversary date to something I didn't know. The credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, at times when Andrew claimed to be working. One Saturday afternoon, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in his pocket from a jewelry store downtown, purchase made on a day he told me he was meeting client. My suspicions grew, but I tried to rationalize them away. Maybe he was planning a surprise for me. Maybe the restaurant charges were client meetings. Maybe I was being paranoid. I confided in my best friend Melissa during our weekly lunch. "I don't want to jump to conclusions," I told her, "but something doesn't feel right." Melissa's expression turned serious. "Trust your gut, Rebecca. You're not the type to create problems out of nothing. Start paying attention to the patterns." The next day, while cleaning our car before a grocery run, I found a pair of small gold hoop earrings wedged between the passenger seat and center console. They weren't mine. My hands shook as I held them up to the light, examining the unfamiliar jewelry that had been in our car. That night, I confronted Andrew. I placed the earrings on the kitchen counter while he was making dinner. "Do you know whose these are?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Andrew glanced at them, and for just a second, panic flashed across his face before he composed himself. "Oh, those must belong to Katie from work. She rode with me to the client meeting last week. I'll return them to her." He took the earrings and dropped them into his pocket, then changed the subject to ask what movie I wanted to watch that night. I agreed to a comedy we'd been wanting to see, but inside, my stomach was in knots. In 7 years of marriage, Andrew had never mentioned a coworker named Katie. My anxiety grew over the following weeks. I lost focus at work, checking my phone constantly for messages from Andrew. I lost weight without trying. Sleep became elusive as I lay awake listening to Andrew's breathing, wondering who he really was. Then came the request that would ultimately unravel everything. Andrew came home early one Thursday, something he rarely did anymore. He found me in the home office cashing up on emails. "I need to talk to you about something," he said, sitting on the edge of the desk rather than in the chair across from me. "Jasmine called me today." My heart sank. What did she want this time? She broke up with that guy she was seeing, Martin. Anyway, he kicked her out of their apartment, and she needs a place to stay. I stopped typing mid-email. "And you told her no, right?" Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, I told her she could stay with us. Just for a few days until she figures things out." "You did what?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Without discussing it with me first?" "She's family, Rebecca," she was crying on the phone. "What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to talk to me before inviting someone to live in our home," I said, feeling the anger rise in my chest. "Especially Jasmine." Andrew sighed. I knew you'd react this way. This is exactly why I didn't ask you first. You've never given Jasmine a fair chance. The argument continued for hours, but in the end, Andrew wouldn't budge. Jasmine would be arriving the next day. I reluctantly agreed but set a firm boundary, 2 weeks max. When Jasmine showed up the following afternoon, she had 4 large suitcases, 2 duffel bags, and several boxes. This was not the luggage of someone planning a short stay. "Thank you so much for letting me crash here," she said, hugging Andrew tightly before giving me a quick, stiff embrace. At 26, Jasmine had grown into her looks, tall and slim with perfect honey blonde hair and green eyes that could switch from innocent to calculating in an instant. "It's just temporary," I reminded her as Andrew carried her bags to our guest room. Jasmine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, I wouldn't dream of imposing. I didn't know then that Jasmine's arrival would be the beginning of the end of my marriage. I couldn't have imagined how quickly and thoroughly she would infiltrate our lives, or how willingly Andrew would let her. Jasmine's first week in our home was a masterclass in boundary pushing. She unpacked all her clothes in the guest room closet and arranged her toiletries permanently in the guest bathroom. When I mentioned apartment hunting, she would sigh dramatically and say, "Everything is so expensive right now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do." She began cooking elaborate dinners, always ready just as Andrew arrived home from work. "I thought I'd contribute since you're both so busy," she'd say, while making Andrew's favorite meals, dishes I'd mentioned in passing years ago that she had clearly filed away for future. The way she touched Andrew set off alarm bells, lingering hand on his shoulder, fixing his collar, brushing imaginary lint from his shirt. Always with plausible deniability, always when she thought I wasn't looking. 10 days into her stay, I came home early from work with a migraine to find Jasmine wearing one of my silk blouses, a birthday gift from Andrew. "Why are you wearing my clothes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level despite the pounding in my head. Jasmine looked down as if surprised to see my blouse on her body. "Oh, I spilled coffee on mine and needed something for a job interview. I was going to wash it before you got home." "Did you have the interview?" "It got rescheduled," she said quickly, "tomorrow morning." I checked her calendar on the refrigerator, where she'd been writing her job interviews. There was nothing scheduled for either day. That night, I told Andrew about the incident. "She's lying about job interviews and wearing my clothes without asking." Andrew frowned. "Are you sure she wasn't just embarrassed to tell you the interview got cancelled, and it's just a shirt, Rebecca? She doesn't have much right now." "That's not the point," I insisted. "It's about respect and boundary." "I think you're being a bit harsh," Andrew replied. "She's going through a rough time." The next evening, I came downstairs to find Andrew and Jasmine huddled together on the couch, looking at something on his laptop. They jumped apart when I entered the room, and Andrew quickly closed the computer. "What are you two looking at?" I asked. "Just some work stuff," Andrew said too quickly. Jasmine was giving me her opinion on a design. Jasmine nodded. "The Phillips project. It's really coming along." I knew Andrew had completed the Phillips project weeks ago. They were lying to my face, not even bothering to keep their stories straight. Later that week, I borrowed Andrew's iPad to look up a recipe while cooking something I'd done 100 times before. A text notification appeared on the screen. From Jasmine, "Can't wait for tomorrow. She'll never suspect a thing." My hands trembled as I opened the message thread, but it was empty. Jasmine or Andrew had deleted their conversation history. I confronted Andrew that night. "What are you and Jasmine planning tomorrow that I'm not supposed to suspect?" His face reddened. "What are you talking about?" I told him about the text. He laughed unconvincingly. "Oh, that, Jasmine is helping me plan a surprise for your birthday next month." Way to ruin it. My birthday was 4 months away. The signs kept accumulating. I'd enter a room to find them whispering, only to have them abruptly change the subject. Andrew began taking more business calls in the backyard where I couldn't overhear. Jasmine started doing Andrew's laundry and organizing his closet, tasks that felt intimately domestic. One morning, Jasmine accidentally walked in on Andrew in the shower. Her apology seemed rehearsed, and Andrew's embarrassment appeared. When I expressed my concerns to Andrew, he became defensive. "You're being paranoid," he said. "Jasmine is family. She's trying to contribute to the household." "By barging in on you in the shower," I challenged. "It was an accident," he insisted. "The door wasn't locked. You're jealous of a relationship that doesn't exist." My work began to suffer. I missed deadlines and fumbled during client presentations. my boss, Kim, called me into her office to ask if everything was all right. Just some family stress, I assured her. Nothing I can't handle. But I was handling it badly. I vacillated between confronting them and withdrawing completely. Some nights I slept in the guest room, claiming insomnia, unable to lie beside Andrew while doubting everything about our marriage. 3 weeks into Jasmine's stay, a week past the deadline I'd set, she suggested a family dinner with just the three of us. She cooked an elaborate meal and opened an expensive bottle of wine. Throughout dinner, Jasmine reminisced about childhood memories, all carefully selected to exclude me or cast me in a negative light. Remember when Dad took us fishing and Rebecca refused to bait her own hook? She laughed. She always was squeamish about the weirdest things. Or the time she locked herself in her room for 2 days because Dad took us both to that concert instead of just her. Andrew laughed along, seemingly oblivious to how these stories portrayed me or how they strategically established a narrative where Jasmine and my father were the close ones, and I was the outsider. When I tried to correct her versions of events, Andrew would give me a look that said, "Don't make a scene." After dinner, Jasmine brought out photo albums. I didn't even know she had pictures of her with my father that I'd never seen. In some, she'd even cropped me out. "Your dad was like a real father to me," she said to me while looking at Andrew. "He filled a void in my life." The subtext was clear. She had taken my father, and now she was taking my husband. That night, as Andrew and I prepared for bed, I tried one more time. "Don't you see what she's doing? Rewriting history, inserting herself into our lives, pushing me out." Andrew sighed heavily. "I think you're reading too much into things. Jasmine appreciates what we're doing for her. She's trying to connect. She's been here for 3 weeks, Andrew. The agreement was 2. She's had some promising interviews," he said. "Just a little more time." "How much more?" I pressed. "I don't know, Rebecca, as long as she needs. That's what family does." In that moment, I realized I was fighting a losing battle. Andrew had already chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. I was becoming a stranger in my own home, watching my husband slip away, powerless to stop it. What I didn't know was that the worst betrayal was yet to come, and it would force me to make the hardest decision of my life. After weeks of mounting tension, I desperately needed space to clear my head. I told Andrew I had a 3-day business trip to New York for a marketing conference. In reality, I planned to stay at Melissa's apartment across town to gather my thoughts and decide what to do about my crumbling marriage. "I'll miss you," Andrew said as he kissed me goodbye, and for a moment, he seemed like my husband again, the man I'd fallen in love with years ago. "Will you, though?" I wanted to ask, but instead, I just smiled and wheeled my suitcase out the door. Melissa's apartment became my sanctuary. We stayed up late drinking wine and dissecting every interaction between Andrew and Jasmine. Melissa, always my fiercest defender, didn't mince words. "It sounds like emotional affair territory at minimum," she said. "The question is whether you want to fight for this marriage or start planning your exit." I spent the first day at Melissa's alternating between rage and grief. By the second day, I'd reached a decision. I would confront them both directly when I return. No more tiptoeing around the issue, no more gaslighting, no more excuses. I needed answers, and I deserved the truth. But something gnawed at me, a persistent uneasiness that wouldn't let me wait another day. Call it intuition or just plain suspicion, but I knew I needed to see what happened in my house when they thought I was gone. "I'm going home early," I told Melissa over coffee on the second morning. She looked concerned. "Are you sure that's a good idea? You're finally getting some perspective." "I need to know, Mel, one way or another." She hugged me tightly. "Call me immediately, no matter what, promise?" I nodded, gathered my minimal belongings, and ordered a rideshare back to my neighborhood. Instead of having the driver pull up to my house, I asked to be dropped off a block away. It was just after 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. Both Andrew and Jasmine should have been at work or interviews, respectively. As I walked toward my house, my heart sank. Both Andrew's silver Audi and Jasmine's blue Honda were parked in the driveway. I approached slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. Using my key, I quietly unlocked the back door that led through the kitchen. I slipped off my shoes and set down my bag, straining to hear any sounds in the house. At first, there was nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Then I heard it. Laughter from upstairs, followed by the muffled sound of music. I moved silently through the kitchen and up the back staircase, each step feeling like a mile. The sound grew clearer as I approached our bedroom, our marital bedroom. The door was partially open, and what I heard next confirmed my worst fears. The unmistakable sounds of intimacy, punctuated by my husband's voice saying my stepsister's name. For several seconds, I stood frozen, my body unable to process what my mind already knew. Then, as if possessed by someone else, I pushed the door open. The scene burned itself into my memory. Andrew and Jasmine in our bed, the bed we had picked out together during our first year of marriage, tangled in sheets that I had washed just days before. They didn't notice me at first, lost in their betrayal. When they finally did, the sequence played out like a bad movie. Casps, scrambling for covers, Andrew's face draining of color, Jasmine's expression shifting from shock to something else entirely. Smugness. "Rebecca," Andrew jerked upright. "You're supposed to be in New York." "Clearly," I said, my voice coming from somewhere distant and cold. "This isn't," he started, then stopped. Even in his panic, he couldn't bring himself to say it wasn't what it looked like, because it was exactly what it looked like. Jasmine pulled the sheet up to cover herself, but made no move to leave the bed, our bed, my bed. "How long?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Andrew looked at Jasmine, then back at me. "It just happened," he tried. I laughed, a harsh sound I didn't recognize. "Try again." Jasmine spoke then, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We didn't want to hurt you, Rebecca." "Shut up," I snapped. "I'm asking my husband." Andrew swallowed hard. "A few months," he admitted. "It started before she moved in." The timeline clicked into place, the late nights, the forgotten anniversary, the changed passwords. So her moving in was planned. It wasn't about her breakup at all. Neither answered, which was answer enough. "Get out," I said quietly. "Becca, please," Andrew stood, wrapping the sheet around his waist. "We need to talk about this like adults." "Like adults," my voice rose. "Adults don't sleep with their wife's stepsister. Adults don't lie for months. What exactly about this situation seems adult to you, Andrew?" "You're overreacting," Jasmine said, making no move to cover herself as the sheet fell away. "These things happen in families." "Not in mine," I said, "not anymore." Andrew approached me, reaching for my arm. "Listen, we can figure this out." "Maybe we can." "If you touch me," I interrupted, "I will break your fingers one by one." He stepped back, recognizing something dangerous in my expression. "I want both of you out of my house," I said. "It's our house," Andrew countered, a flash of anger crossing his face. "My name is on the mortgage too." "Then I'll leave," I said, turning toward the door. "Actually," Andrew called after me, his voice suddenly calmer, more calculated, "that might be best. Jasmine and I have been talking, and we think it would be easier for everyone if you found somewhere else to live." I turned back slowly. "Excuse me?" "I've already spoken to a lawyer," he continued. "Since we're both on the deed, neither can force the other out. But considering the circumstances, it makes sense for you to go. After all, there are two of us and one of you." The coldness of his logic, the premeditation it revealed, struck me harder than walking in on them. This wasn't just an affair, this was a coup. "When did you become this person?" I asked quietly. Andrew had the decency to look away, Jasmine didn't. "There's something else you should know," Andrew added. "I've added Jasmine to our joint account, for household expenses." The final betrayal. My knees nearly buckled. Not only had he given my stepsister my husband and my home, but he'd given her access to my money, our money, earned over years of partnership and trust. I turned without another word and walked downstairs. In the kitchen, I grabbed my keys and phone, leaving everything else behind. In the driveway, I stopped at Jasmine's car and used my house key to scratch a single word across the driver's door. "Whore." It was childish and beneath me, but in that moment, it was the only power I had left. I drove aimlessly for hours, the same thoughts circling like vultures. How had I missed this? How long had they been laughing at me behind my back? What had I done to deserve such betrayal from the two people who should have loved me most? Eventually, I called Melissa. "You were right," I said when she answered. "It's worse than we thought." "Come over," she said immediately. "Don't go back there tonight." As I drove to Melissa's apartment, my shock began hardening into something else, something cold and clear and focused. Andrew and Jasmine had taken everything from me, but they had also freed me from any obligation to play fair. They had declared war, and I would not be the only casualty. The first week after discovering Andrew and Jasmine's betrayal passed in a blur of grief and rage. I barely ate or slept, existing in a state of emotional shock at Melissa's apartment. During the day, I called in sick to work, unable to focus on anything beyond my basic needs. At night, I alternated between sobbing into Melissa's spare pillow and staring blankly at the ceiling, replaying years of memories through the lens of new knowledge. "You need to see someone," Melissa said on day 8, handing me a business card. "Catherine Williams, she's the shark's shark of divorce attorneys. My cousin used her last." I looked at the embossed card without really seeing it. "I'm not ready." "Ready or not, you need to protect yourself," Melissa insisted. "Andrew's already talking to lawyers. You said so yourself." She was right. With mechanical motions, I called Catherine's office and scheduled a consultation for the following day. Catherine Williams operated out of a sleek downtown office with views of Boston Harbor. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing. "Tell me everything," she said after introductions. "Don't leave anything out." For the next hour, I recounted my marriage, Jasmine's arrival, and the devastating discovery. Catherine took minimal notes, maintaining eye contact throughout. When I finished, she set down her pen. "I won't sugarcoat this, Rebecca. Your husband has been planning this for some time. Adding another person to your joint account without your knowledge or consent is a major red flag. Can he do that legally?" "Unfortunately, yes, joint accounts allow either party to add authorized users. It's not illegal, just deeply unethical." She leaned forward. "Have you checked your accounts since leaving?" I hadn't. Right there in her office, I logged into our banking app. What I saw made my stomach drop. Andrew had transferred $50,000 half our savings to a new account I couldn't access. "This is actually good for us," Catherine said, reviewing the transaction details. "It shows financial misconduct early in the separation process. Have you tried to return home since leaving?" "No, he suggested I find somewhere else to live." "And have you been in contact with him?" "He's called and texted. I haven't responded." Catherine nodded approvingly. "Continue that approach for now. Meanwhile, I want you to do several things immediately." She outlined a series of protective measures: open individual bank accounts, transfer my direct deposits, collect documentation of all our assets, gather evidence of the affair, and retrieve essential personal items from the house. "What about the house itself?" I asked. "He can't just keep it, can he?" "The marital home will be addressed in the settlement. For now, focus on financial separation and evidence gathering." I left Catherine's office with a to-do list and something I hadn't felt in days: a sense of purpose. That afternoon, I learned Andrew had changed the locks when I tried to retrieve some clothes while they were at work. I stood on my own front porch, key useless in my hand, fighting back tears of frustration. Through mutual friends, I discovered Andrew was spreading a narrative that I had been emotionally abusive and controlling, and that he and Jasmine had found each other through their shared experience of my manipulation. The character assassination felt like salt in an open wound. By the third week, my initial shock had transformed into cold, clear focus. I returned to work, explaining my absence as a family emergency without elaboration. My boss Kim was surprisingly understanding, having gone through a difficult divorce herself years earlier. Melissa continued to be my rock, offering her spare bedroom indefinitely and listening to my increasingly strategic late-night planning sessions. "I don't just want a divorce," I told her one evening. "I want them to lose everything the way I did." "That's the wine talking," Melissa said, though I could tell part of her agreed. "No, it's me talking." Finally, I sat up straighter. Andrew and Jasmine orchestrated this betrayal meticulously. They manipulated me, gaslit me, and tried to push me out of my own life. Why should they get to keep the benefits of my years of work and emotional investment? That night, I began creating what I would later call my restoration plan. Not just revenge, but a pathway to reclaiming what was rightfully mine and ensuring they faced consequences for their action. I remembered key details about Andrew's business practices that suddenly seemed relevant, like how he occasionally used company accounts for personal expenses, justifying it as perks of being a partner. Or how he had once boasted about finding tax gray areas to maximize our return. I thought about Jasmine's history of manipulative behavior and how she had isolated me from my father years ago with similar tactics. Patterns emerge, connections form, and a strategy took shape. My plan had 3 phases: financial justice, professional consequences, and social destruction. Each required careful preparation and perfect timing. For the financial component, I consulted with both Catherine and a forensic accountant named Robert, who specialized in divorce cases. We mapped out a strategy to protect my assets while documenting Andrew's financial misconduct. The law allows you to secure your rightful share, Robert explained. It's not vindictive, it's protective. For the professional aspect, I researched ethics guidelines for Andrew's architecture firm and reviewed his partner agreement, which Melissa helped me obtain through a contact in the legal department. There's a morality clause, I noted, highlighting the relevant section, and specific prohibitions against using company resources for personal gain. The social component required the most delicate touch. I created a timeline of Andrew and Jasmine's deception, supported by text messages, credit card statements, and photographs. I made lists of our mutual friends, identifying who might have suspected the affair and who would be most shocked. I also reached out to Andrew's parents, with whom I'd always had a warm relationship. They lived in Chicago and weren't frequent visitors, which explained why they hadn't witnessed the changes in our household. I didn't tell them everything over the phone, just that Andrew and I were having serious problems, and that I would value talking with them in person soon. Throughout this planning period, I underwent a personal transformation as well. I joined a gym, channeling my anger into physical strength. I cut my long brown hair into a sleek, confident bob. I invested in a new wardrobe not to impress anyone, but to armor myself for the battles ahead. "You look different," Kim commented one morning at work, "stronger somehow." "I'm stronger," I replied, realizing it was true. 6 weeks after discovering the affair, I was ready. My evidence was organized, my strategy set, my resolve unshakable. The woman who had fled her home in tears was gone, replaced by someone who understood her worth and was prepared to fight for. The night before implementing Phase 1, I sat with Melissa on her balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the city light. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Once you start, there's no going back." I thought about Andrew's betrayal, about Jasmine's smug face in my bed, about the life they had stolen while I remained blind to their deception. "I'm not going back," I said. "I'm going forward, and they're going to wish they'd never crossed me." Morning would bring the beginning of the end for Andrew and Jasmine. As I fell asleep that night, I felt calm for the first time in weeks. They had taken my past, but they would not take my future. That belonged to me alone. Phase 1. Financial justice began at exactly 9:00 a.m. on a Monday morning, when I knew Andrew would be in his weekly partners meeting and Jasmine would be sleeping late, as had become her habit according to Melissa's neighbor who lived down the street from my house. I walked into Boston Federal Bank wearing a conservative navy pantsuit and projecting confidence I had practiced in the mirror. I asked to speak with the branch manager, Mr. Calloway, with whom Andrew and I had opened our accounts years ago. "Mrs. Miller," he greeted me warmly, "it's been a while. What can I do for you today?" "I need to discuss some urgent matters regarding our joint accounts," I explained. "My husband and I are separating, and there have been some concerning transactions." I showed him the records of Andrew's recent $50,000 transfer and Jasmine's addition as an authorized user. "I understand your concern," Mr. Calloway said carefully. "While both account holders can add authorized users, I can see why this particular situation is troubling." "I'm not asking you to reverse his actions," I clarified. "I simply want to protect what's legally mine before more funds disappear." With my name on the accounts and proper identification, I was able to withdraw my rightful portion of our remaining joint funds, not a penny more than half, as Catherine had advised. I immediately transferred this money into a new individual account at a different bank, one Andrew had never used. Next, I visited our investment broker and executed similar protective measures for my portion of our investment portfolio. By noon, I had secured approximately $220,000 in assets, my fair share of our liquid holding. I then systematically canceled all joint credit cards after using them one last time to purchase necessities I would need for the coming months. A new laptop, professional attire, and a consultation with a security company to change the locks on the condo I had just leased downtown. Throughout these transactions, I meticulously documented everything. Catherine had emphasized the importance of clean hands in divorce proceedings. I needed to show I was acting responsibly to protect assets, not vindictively to punish Andrew. At 3:17 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Andrew had discovered the financial moves. His texts escalated from confused, "Did you make a large withdrawal?" to angry, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" to threatening, "My lawyer will make you regret this." I didn't respond to any of them, following Catherine's advice to maintain communication silence. Instead, I forwarded the threatening messages to her, strengthening our case for Andrew's hostile approach to the separation. That evening, I filed a fraud report regarding unusual activity on accounts Jasmine had accessed, carefully noting transactions that had occurred in locations where she had been but I had not. This created a record of her misuse of funds that would prove valuable later. Phase 1 was complete. I had secured my financial foundation and created a paper trail of Andrew and Jasmine's misconduct. Now it was time for Phase 2, professional consequences. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Andrew's business partner, Richard Grant. Andrew and Richard had founded their architecture firm 7 years ago, and Richard had been the best man at our wedding. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," Richard said when I met him for coffee near his office. "I value our friendship independently of what's happened with Andrew," I replied. "But I'm here about something concerning." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Rebecca, I try to stay out of my partner's personal life." "This isn't just personal," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "It's professional." The folder contained documentation of Andrew using company accounts for expenses related to his affair with Jasmine, dinners logged as client meetings, jewelry purchased through the company's client gifts budget, even a weekend getaway disguised as a professional conference. Richard's face darkened as he reviewed the evidence. "How did you get these records?" "Andrew never logged out of the company system on our home computer," I explained. "When I was gathering my personal files before leaving, I noticed these discrepancies. As someone who cares about the firm's reputation, I felt obligated to bring them to your attention." It wasn't the complete truth. Melissa's contact in the accounting department had helped me access these records, but it was close enough. "This is serious," Richard said finally. "If he's misusing company funds." "I'm not asking you to fire him," I said. "I just thought you should know what kind of person you're partnered with. The kind who cheats on his wife with her stepsister and uses company resources to do it." I left Richard with the folder and a lot to think about. By the end of the week, I heard through mutual connections that the firm had launched an internal audit of Andrew's accounts and placed him on a project review status that limited his client contact. Next, I reached out to Andrew's biggest client, Westfield Development, with whom he had been working on an eco-friendly office complex. The project manager, Sophie Chen, had always been friendly with me at company events. "I hate to make this call," I told her. "But given our past conversations about professional ethics, I felt you should know about some concerns regarding the Westfield project." I explained that during my financial separation from Andrew, I had discovered questionable billing practices related to their project. I was careful not to make direct accusations, instead framing it as potential concerns that warranted a closer look. "I appreciate your discretion," Sophie said. "We take our contractor relationships very seriously." Within days, Westfield had requested a comprehensive review of all invoices and deliverables from Andrew's firm. The timing couldn't have been worse for him. They were approaching a critical approval phase for the project. The final professional blow came in the form of an anonymous tip to the Architecture Licensing Board about ethical violations in Andrew's practice. The tip included just enough verifiable information to trigger a preliminary review. Phase 2 had successfully compromised Andrew's professional standing without crossing any legal lines. The walls were closing in, but the most devastating phase was yet to come. Phase 3. Social destruction began with a dinner party at Melissa's apartment. I invited 6 of our closest mutual friends, couples who had vacationed with us, celebrated holidays with us, been part of our inner circle for years. "Thank you all for coming," I said once everyone was seated. "I know there have been rumors circulating about Andrew and me, and I wanted you to hear the truth directly from me." For the next hour, I calmly presented the timeline of Andrew and Jasmine's betrayal, supported by irrefutable evidence, text messages, photos, credit card statements, and witness accounts. I didn't raise my voice or cry. I simply laid out the facts chronologically, showing how they had conspired against me for months. "I'm not asking you to choose sides," I concluded, though we all knew that was exactly what was happening. "I just wanted you to know what really happened, not the version Andrew has been sharing." The room was silent when I finished. Then Marie, who had been my friend since college, stood up and hugged me tightly. "We're with you," she said. One by one, the others expressed their support and disgust with Andrew's behavior. Within days, the social ripples spread through our extended circle. Andrew and Jasmine found themselves uninvited from dinner parties, group vacations, and even professional networking events where personal and business relationships overlapped. Next, I crafted a carefully worded email to our extended family members, focusing on facts rather than emotions. After much consideration, I wanted to inform you directly that Andrew and I are divorcing due to his ongoing relationship with Jasmine, it began. The message included no accusations or pleas for support, just a dignified announcement that made the situation clear. The responses flooded in expressions of shock, support, and in many cases, anger toward Andrew and Jasmine. Several relatives forwarded me messages Andrew had sent them attempting to justify his actions, further exposing his desperate attempts to control the narrative. The most significant social confrontation came when I finally met with Andrew's parents, James and Carol Miller, who flew in from Chicago after hearing about the separation. Initially, they had been reserved on the phone, clearly having heard Andrew's version of events. I met them at their hotel, bringing a carefully organized portfolio of evidence. "We've always thought of you as a daughter," James began awkwardly. "Andrew says there have been problems for a long time." "I understand he's your son," I replied, "but there's something you need to see." I showed them text messages between Andrew and Jasmine dating back months before she moved in. I showed them credit card statements for gifts he had purchased her using our joint accounts. Finally, I showed them photos a neighbor had taken of them together while I was supposedly at work kissing in our driveway, clearly more than just family members. Carol gasped, her hand covering her mouth. James's face hardened into a mask of disappointment. "We raised him better than this," he said finally. By the end of our meeting, Andrew's parents had promised to confront him directly. They weren't taking sides exactly, but they weren't accepting his version of events anymore either. The final blow came when Jasmine's mother Elaine learned the full extent of her daughter's betrayal. Elaine, who had divorced my father years ago but maintained cordial relations, called me in tears. "I don't understand how she could do this to you," she sobbed, "after everything your father and I tried to teach her about family loyalty." "Some lessons don't take," I replied, surprising myself with my lack of anger toward Elaine. She was another victim of Jasmine's manipulation, albeit in a different way. Elaine confronted Jasmine during a tense phone call that ended with her declaring she would not financially support Jasmine's immoral choices any longer, cutting off the supplementary income Jasmine had relied on for years. Throughout this phase, I maintained a carefully crafted social media presence, not directly addressing the divorce, but posting occasional updates about new beginnings and finding strength in difficult times. The supportive comments accumulated, creating a public record of who stood where in the aftermath of Andrew's betrayal. With all three phases in motion, the final blow came when Catherine filed for divorce, citing adultery and financial misconduct. Andrew was served papers at his office during a client meeting, a detail Catherine assured me was not intentional but which I secretly celebrated. The judge assigned to our case responded to Catherine's emergency motion by freezing our remaining joint assets pending resolution, citing the evidence of Andrew's previous large withdrawal and Jasmine's irregular spending pattern. Within 2 months of executing my plan, Andrew and Jasmine's world had collapsed around them. Andrew was placed on indefinite leave from his firm following the internal investigation. The Westfield project was reassigned to another architect. Their social circle had contracted to almost nothing, with former friends crossing the street to avoid them. Most satisfyingly, they were forced to move out of our house and into a small apartment when the mortgage payment became unmanageable on Andrew's reduced income. The judge had granted me exclusive use of the home during divorce proceedings, though I chose to remain in my downtown condo, which felt untainted by their betrayal. As for Jasmine, she abandoned Andrew within weeks of their financial downturn, unable to sustain her interest when the lifestyle she had coveted disappeared. According to mutual acquaintances, she had moved to Chicago, claiming to be starting fresh after escaping a toxic situation. In a final, pathetic attempt to salvage something, Andrew called me late one night, clearly intoxicated. "I made a terrible mistake," he slurred. "We could try again, I still love you." I listened silently until he finished, then said simply, "No, you don't, you never did." I hung up and blocked his number. My revenge was complete, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my power. They had tried to discard me, to push me out of my own life. Instead, they had lost everything while I emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to build a new future on my own terms. 6 months after serving Andrew with divorce papers, I stood in the entryway of what had once been our home, now transformed beyond recognition. Gone were the slate blue walls Andrew had insisted on, replaced with a warm terracotta that glowed in the morning light. The heavy leather furniture that had dominated our living room had been donated, making way for pieces that reflected my own taste, a mix of modern and comfortable, with splashes of color in artwork and text. I ran my fingers along the new quartz countertops in the kitchen, remembering how Jasmine had cooked elaborate meals here to impress Andrew. Now the space was mine alone, redesigned to suit the way I lived and cooked. The house had been awarded to me in the divorce settlement, a small victory that felt larger than its monetary value. I had reclaimed my territory. Though I had officially moved back in a month ago, I still kept my downtown condo as an investment property. The rental income supplemented the substantial promotion I'd received at work. While my personal life had been in chaos, my professional performance had not only recovered but excelled. Tim had recognized my resilience with a senior director position and a team of my own to manage. "You've shown exceptional leadership during an incredibly difficult time," she'd said during my performance review. "That's exactly the kind of strength this company valued." The divorce itself had been finalized with surprising speed once Andrew realized the extent of the evidence against him. Catherine had negotiated a settlement that reflected the duration of our marriage and his misconduct. While not vindictive, it was certainly fair, some might even say generous on my part. My healing journey hadn't been solely about professional success and material reclamation, though. In the darkest days following the discovery, I had joined a support group for people dealing with infidelity. The weekly meetings became an anchor in my week, a place where I could express my anger and grief without judgment. Betrayal trauma is real, our group facilitator Sarah often reminded us. What you're feeling isn't just heartbreak, it's a profound violation of trust that affects how you see yourself and the world. Through those sessions, I connected with others who truly understood the unique pain of being deceived by those closest to you. We shared coping strategies, celebrated small victories, and validated each other's experiences in ways even well-meaning friends like Melissa couldn't fully manage. I also began working with a therapist, Dr. Patel, who specialized in recovery from relationship trauma. Our sessions helped me process not only Andrew's betrayal, but also the long history with Jasmine that had primed me for this particular wound. "You've spent years being gaslit by Jasmine," Dr. Patel observed during one particularly insightful session. "Your father's dismissal of her behavior toward you created a pattern where you doubted your own perceptions." Andrew exploited that same vulnerability. Gradually, I learned to recognize the red flags I had missed or ignored, not to blame myself, but to strengthen my boundaries for the future. I developed a clearer understanding of my own worth and the treatment I deserved from others. The physical transformation came alongside the emotional one. The stress-induced weight loss of those early weeks had been replaced by a healthy strength built through regular boxing classes, a therapeutic outlet for residual anger that left me feeling powerful rather than victimized. My new haircut had evolved into a style that suited the woman I was becoming rather than the wife I had been. 3 months after the divorce, I sold the house. Despite reclaiming and renovating it, I ultimately decided that truly moving forward meant creating something completely new. I purchased a condo overlooking the Boston Harbor, a space that had never known Andrew or Jasmine, with no memories lurking in corners or shadows. With some of the proceeds from the house sale, I booked the trip to Japan I had always wanted to take, a journey Andrew had repeatedly postponed because it didn't interest him. For 2 weeks, I explored Kyoto and Tokyo alone, discovering a self-sufficiency and sense of adventure I hadn't known I possessed. It was the first of several solo travels that helped me redefine myself outside the context of my failed marriage. Throughout this period, information about Andrew and Jasmine trickled in through mutual connections, though I never sought it out directly. Their relationship had imploded spectacularly once the financial well ran dry. Jasmine had indeed moved to Chicago, where she was reportedly dating a significantly older man with considerable wealth. Andrew had been forced to relocate to a smaller city where his professional reputation wasn't as damaged, starting over at a mid-level position with a fraction of his former salary and status. 8 months after the discovery, I ran into Andrew unexpectedly at a grocery store. I almost didn't recognize him. He had aged visibly, with new lines around his eyes and gray streaking his once perfect hair. His clothes, formerly meticulously pressed, looked rumpled and slightly too large, as if he had lost weight unhealthily. "Rebecca," he said, his voice cashing, "you look amazing." "Thank you," I replied simply. I've been wanting to call you, he continued, shifting uncomfortably, to apologize properly. What Jasmine and I did is in the past, I interrupted, not unkindly. I've moved on, Andrew. Right, he nodded, eyes dropping to the floor. Of course you have. As I walked away, I realized I felt nothing for him, not anger, not love, not even resentment, just a vague pity for someone who had destroyed something precious for something ultimately worthless. In that moment, I knew I had truly healed. The final step in my recovery came when I cautiously began dating again. My first few attempts were awkward coffee meetings that went nowhere, but they served their purpose in helping me remember how to be open to new connections. Then I met Michael at a charity event for the Boston Public Library, a pediatric surgeon with kind eyes and an easy laugh who asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. Our relationship developed slowly, with clear communication and careful boundary setting on both sides. When I eventually shared the story of my marriage, and Michael's response was perfect. Thank you for trusting me with that. It says a lot about your strength that you've come through something so painful with your capacity for trust intact. As I approach the 1-year anniversary of that devastating discovery, I can honestly say I'm grateful for the journey, though not for the pain that precipitated it. The woman I am today, stronger, more self-aware, unwilling to accept less than I deserve, may never have emerged without that crucible. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing the inexcusable or reconciling with those who have harmed you. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of ongoing anger and resentment. I haven't forgiven Andrew or Jasmine for their sake, but for my own peace of mind. They no longer occupy space in my thoughts or emotions. The lessons I've taken from this experience are ones I carry forward. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Don't ignore red flags out of loyalty or hope. Maintain your independence within relationships. And perhaps most importantly, know that you are stronger than you think, capable of rebuilding, even when it feels like everything has been destroyed. Life isn't a straight line from happiness to more happiness. It's a complex journey of growth, sometimes catalyzed by profound loss. The betrayal that once defined my story has become just a chapter in a much longer narrative, one that I continue to write on my own terms, with wisdom hard-won and deeply valued. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover how strong you really are, and sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't what you do to others, but how magnificently you rebuild your life without them. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? What helped you move forward? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's challenges. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, only by how you choose to rise after falling. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.